allow this day to go by without making mention of someone that is very dear to all of us. David Maines passed away. The founder of this ministry passed away a year ago today. We all still remember that day.
You know, in this building, Maggie, it's called the green room, where the guests come, and the makeup area, there's these great big pictures of David Maines in his youth, and I go by them every day, and I'm reminded again what this ministry is all about. And you know, when word came down, one of our executives, Steve Hubley, came into the studio and told us that David had passed away. We as a production team got together and we prayed, and it was a very somber moment, but it was also a moment that we were rejoicing because we knew that this guy who was preaching about Jesus was with him.
Absolutely, and every day that we come into the studios, we're reminded of the big shoes that we are left to fill. But, you know, what I loved about David is he saw our unique ways of being able to minister, and he absolutely encouraged us in those areas. And so we just come here every day wanting to do what David did best over the years, and that was to tell you at home about Jesus, to remind people that there is hope in Jesus Christ.
And one of the most powerful moments, and it was actually your suggestion, Maggie, was to bring David's casket into Studio A. Norma Jean and the family were there, and it was like an honor guard. And we honored this great man. I mean, David would say, no, I'm just an average guy. No, but we loved him. He was a big figure, and it's hard to replace a guy like that. So you're right, we got big shoes to fill. But he really loved us, and he loves you. And again, we want to continue on this amazing ministry.
Absolutely, and we continue to pray for the family, for Norma Jean, all the grandkids and kids, as they continue his legacy as well in their independent ministries as well. So we're going to have a tribute later on in the show, just to remind us of the great man of David Maines. We have so much more to come. Stay with us.
Join us for Huntley in the Holy Land. Come and experience Israel on the trip of a lifetime as you walk in the steps of Jesus. March 19th to 28th. Hosted by Cheryl Weber, Greg Musselman, Maggie John, and Harvey Katz. Your guided tour includes 6 days of sightseeing in Israel on a modern air-conditioned motor coach. Stroll through Nazareth Village to experience what daily life was like in Jesus' time. Visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the new Friends of Zion Museum. Then see the City of David and the Davidson Center, one of Jerusalem's top tourist attractions for its historical and archaeological significance. Enjoy comfortable hotel stays and take part in a special 100 Huntley Street Easter broadcast. Come with us to the Holy Land to create meaningful memories and find surprise blessings as the words of the Bible come to life in the landscape before you. For more information and to register, visit crossroads.ca/Israel Tour or call 1-800-265-3100.
There's a lot of studies that have shown that there is a real benefit, a health benefit, an emotional benefit, a sociological benefit to being in God's creation. But sadly, it's rare these days.
We're looking into spiritual practices that will help you love your walk with God and energize your life. Pastor Ken Shigematsu, you suggest that friendship is actually a spiritual practice. It's not an option. Friendship is a spiritual practice. What are you grounding that in?
Social scientists tell us that we have these mirror neurons in our brain that cause us to mimic other people. And so if you're at a party and you're talking to someone and they reach their hand into a bowl and grab some chips, you're more likely to reach your hand into that bowl of chips and grab some yourself. You're laughing right now.
I don't need much help to grab chips, but anyway.
You walk into a room where people are laughing. Even if you haven't heard the joke, you're more likely to laugh or at least smile as well, because emotions are contagious. Our mirror neurons also cause us to mimic other people's desires. And so if you want to be a person who loves God and deeply desires to serve Him, you will find a friend who also loves God and desires to serve Him. Because the book of Proverbs tells us, walk with the wise and grow wise. Walk with those who love God, and you will become a person who loves God as well.
Wow, we feel that two-way here on the camera. We have a great loyal audience. We get these 1,200 calls, and people want, every day, people are calling in for spiritual help and prayer. But you need it in the flesh too. You so need this. I mean, if you go through in the New Testament and just circle love one another, this is God's plan, is that we have physical friendships, isn't it? It's part of spiritual zest. How do you get them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, pray for them. A lot of people that are viewing have probably prayed for a romantic partner, maybe a spouse. But have you prayed for a spiritual friend? You know, Jesus pulled 2 all-nighters. One was famously before he went to the cross. The other all-nighter he pulled was as he prayed about who would be his disciples, people who would eventually become his friends.
Wow, so really make it a concentrated effort. Do you schedule time for it?
I do, and so on my Sabbath I will regularly connect with family and friends. And so I've got a friend named Elizabeth who I trained with through the Arrow program that trained me to become a pastor. When Elizabeth was in college, she would walk around the Stanford campus with a javelin on her shoulder. She was on the track team, but there was also some rapist or some dangerous figure that was coming onto campus, so she wanted to scare him away. When I'm with Elizabeth, she will affirm the good things in me, but if I need it, she'll throw the javelin, in a manner of speaking, between my eyes and tell me I'm overworking or I'm in a situation where I might be tempted to compromise in some way morally. If you have a friend that you can trust enough to hold you accountable and to share your fears and insecurities with, your failures with, your hopes and dreams with, your life with God will flourish, and you will also experience a lot more joy and meaning in your life.
Okay, spiritual practice number 7, that was friendship. 8 terrific ways, 8 terrific practices to keep us grounded and productive and fruitful with our relationship with God. Here's how you can get your copy and work through these spiritual practices.
I admit I've had a divided heart, and I've struggled between the tension of worldly success and spiritual fulfillment. But I've learned that what keeps us from flourishing in our spiritual lives is the neglect of our inner life of the soul. And I want to show you a fresh perspective in my new book, Survival Guide for the Soul. Through my stories and a wide range of sources, I demonstrate how the gospel lifts this pressure off of our shoulders, restores our desires, and reorders our spiritual lives. I share spiritual practices that will help you attune to God's presence and discover a liberating and countercultural definition of true greatness. Call 100 Huntley Street today with your best ministry gift, and you'll receive a copy of my book, 1-800-265-3100. I pray that this book changes your life.
One of our goals at 100 Huntley Street is that you would flourish in your spiritual walk. That's why we want to get you Pastor Ken's book. You think, oh yeah, but if I get all these things like these rules and, you know, is it just going to weigh me down? No, these are principles. And I found as I've been going through this book, it's actually freeing me up. So with your best ministry gift, we want to get you the spiritual guide for the soul into your hands today. Well, coming up next, we're joined by an expert in the field of betrayal within marriage. Here's Maggie to learn more.
The sad truth is that every year marriages end because of sexual betrayal. But how does the person in the relationship who has been betrayed heal? Our guest today is a marriage and family therapist, a certified clinical partner specialist, and a certified sex addiction therapist, and says there can be healing from sexual betrayal. Welcome, Dr. Sherry Keffer.
It's great to be with you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Explain what sexual betrayal means.
So sexual betrayal is something that you don't know about. That's where the craziness comes. It's deception. So when you're in a committed relationship and you're consenting to fidelity, right? You've both decided. When someone decides to step outside of that in a non-consenting way by using porn, having an affair, getting involved with cyber sex, whatever it is, it's a sexual betrayal because the person you're with did it without your knowledge, and it hurts.
Yeah, you know that's intimately because you went through that.
I do.
Tell us about your husband and what happened.
So Connor and I met, and we met long distance. We dated for a year and then got married. And during our courtship, after we got engaged, I discovered one thing. He actually told me that he had called a 900 line. Now, I didn't know what a 900 line was, but I found out when I asked him, and it was a sex line. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do, which was forgive him. I talked to his brother, and his brother said, guys do this, it's common, and if they tell you they haven't, they're probably lying. So minimized it, and I didn't ask another question, but I did forgive him and didn't ask the question again. But what I didn't know is that there was a long history of that. He had been involved with porn for years and had sexually acted out. And so 6 months into our marriage, the porn surfaced again, and it continued throughout the term of our marriage. So the things that happened were pornography, affairs, prostitutes, the whole gamut. So,
And he was working in ministry. So
he was a pastor. Yeah. So you can imagine the disillusionment when not only was he my husband, but he was, practicing in the pulpit, practicing as a pastor. So. Very confusing to me. I mean, I went to Bible college and I thought, hey, life is good, and we were really set to serve the world, and then everything fell apart.
And eventually separated from your husband.
Yeah.
But you also start to find out that you had past trauma as well in your life.
I did. So I had a history of trauma in my family of origin. I grew up with some severe mental illness. And so because of that, I think I already had some shame beliefs. I thought I wasn't good enough, and I was actually surprised that this man who was just the cat's meow was interested in me, and that's why I married him. But really, because of the shame of my past, I don't think I saw clearly, and I actually had some fear of intimacy. I had fear of getting close to others. So I'd let them get so close to me, and then I thought if they got to know me well enough, they might reject me, pull away, leave. And so both of us came into the marriage with some intimacy issues and didn't really know each other well.
And that's a story for many people that go through that sexual betrayal, be it they don't really understand themselves. They've already gone through so much trauma in their own life that sometimes it becomes an internal battle of why me, or did I do something wrong?
Yeah. Well, and that's a product of shame. I did some research to try to figure out what that was, and what I found out with 100 women is that 80% of them did like me. I call myself a trauma squared, meaning I had trauma in family of origin and also betrayal trauma. But 20% of them had no early ACE scores. It's adult. I mean, it's looking at childhood trauma. And so 20% of them didn't. When we experienced betrayal, shame gets attached to us. It's the way our brains work. It wires in a negative belief about ourselves. So, and some emotions. So for me, the betrayal trauma wired in, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. Something's wrong with me. I can't trust anyone. Those were beliefs that I had, but I also had some from my family of origin that I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to ask for what I need. I can't really express what I want.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we get back, Dr. Sherry explains why sexual betrayal can cause PTSD, and is there hope after an indiscretion? We'll find out. Stay with us.
Still to come.
I became hypervigilant, really revved up, more irritable, scared. I became very unsure of myself. I had a lot of shame that I had to deal with.
Well, God gave me a car, and when I had that car, that was it. I was going to Huntley Street. And God gave me a car because I had an opportunity to come here and witness and do what my mother did. I had a call the other day from a man in New York who wanted to rededicate his life to Jesus. What a privilege. Every time you pick up the phone, you're talking to Jesus. Prayer is everything. Prayer is my passion. It's what I live for. It's what I do all day in small episodes or big episodes, and I can testify that God never fails.
We're back with Dr. Sherry Keffer, the author of this great new book, Intimate Deception, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Betrayal. And you just shared your story, Sherry, of sexual betrayal from your husband. You talk about PTSD, and I was shocked when I was reading that this can cause symptoms like PTSD. Explain this.
Yeah. So out of my research, again, with 100 women, I gave them something called a PCL5, which shows clinical symptoms of PTSD. 79% of them, that's 3 out of every 4 women that experienced betrayal, had post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So that's big, because I think we don't think about betrayal as having the magnitude of pain that it would cause, that someone might, when they come back from serving in the Iraq War, or, you know, having gone through 9/11, or having had a car accident. Those are things that we think about traditionally as trauma.
Right.
But betrayal actually causes the same type of trauma in us.
And did you see that in your relationship? Did you see symptoms of PTSD?
Oh, totally.
Explain that. What does that look like?
So I became hypervigilant, really revved up, more irritable, scared. I became very unsure of myself. I had a lot of shame that I had to deal with. When I think about who I was before discovering Connor's betrayal, I was a different person. Yes, I had pain from my past, but I felt good about who I was primarily. But trauma and betrayal especially jacks us up. It causes us to believe things about ourselves that aren't true. And one of them is that it's my fault, that something I did caused this to happen. But truth be told, you know, in marriages, there's normal struggles. And then there's sometimes struggles that are really tough that you've got to work through. But there's no struggle that is bad enough that makes it okay for somebody to betray.
Absolutely. You talk about negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And how, again, exactly what you're saying about just this constant dialogue that you're having in your mind, where you're wondering, where did I go wrong? Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, and that's really common for sexual betrayal.
Yeah. So you have something in here called the 180 turnaround. And we can't go through all the steps, but highlight some of those 5 steps that you think we can, that can be used to help in a turnaround.
So what the 180-degree turnaround is a tool, a quick tool to help you look at what it is, the negative belief that I'm believing. So I always ask people to think about this. Say it, write it down like you hear it in your head. What's the belief about yourself that you have in light of what happened to you? So we hear it like, I'm not good enough, or I can't trust anyone. Write it down. Then what I say is, I want you to turn it around. I want you to flip it to the opposite. What would you like to believe about yourself? So the opposite of I'm not good enough would be I am good enough. The opposite of I can't trust anyone is I can choose whom to trust. So write it down, and that's your goal. Whatever it takes, I talk about the wit, whatever it takes you need to do to get to that truth is where it is the work you want to do, right? You don't want to stop until you get there. And then I also, part of that is asking, what is a negative belief in me that might serve a purpose? Like it's kind of disguised. Like let's just say I believe I don't trust anyone. What's the benefit to that? And a lot of people say there's no benefit. And I say, well, think about it. If I believe I can't trust anyone, and maybe I'm not good enough, I'm going to be really isolated. I'm not going to give my heart again. I'm not going to trust. And that takes us right down a dark rabbit hole and leads to depression. So getting our mind healed from where we came from through the shame is really an important piece to getting your life back, getting wholeness back.
And part of that trust is trusting God maybe again.
It is.
And maybe blaming God for the decisions your spouse made, maybe blaming God for the way that you feel. How did you heal that relationship? Was there issues? Were you questioning God?
Totally. So I talk about something in my book called The Dirty Dozen,
Yeah.
which are the layers of trauma. And one of them is a spiritual or faith trauma. So if you can imagine, you know, being married to a pastor and life was good. But when all this happened, I definitely said, where are you, God?
So is there hope?
Ton of hope.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a billboard of hope. I think because I have been through a lot of pain in my marriage to Connor. There was pornography, affairs, prostitutes, the whole gamut. And I got to be honest, I walked 17 years jacked up. So when I say that, I felt like I healed broken, like a limb that had been broken. My bone wasn't set straight. And so out of this pain of my life and the work that I had to do to get whole again is what's in there. It's really a roadmap because my heart wants people to heal. And if betrayal happens in a marriage, if that woman or man is laying flat on the ground because of the pain, because of the trauma, they can't fight for that marriage. They can't fight for their families. They can't even stand up. And so my goal is to help them heal well so that they do have the energy to press into the battle and so that they can heal straight. They can heal and know who they are. And really, I think, even heal better. So many of the stories in my book, as well as my own story, shows resiliency.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
Yeah.
The name of the book is Intimate Deception, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Betrayal. And maybe you are watching this show and you can totally agree with what Sherry's talking about. Maybe you're right now in a destructive relationship. Maybe you have been betrayed by your spouse. Would you consider calling our prayer lines? Our prayer partners would love to pray with you, to give you hope, to remind you that Jesus loves you, that he sees the situation that you're in, and he wants you to be fine. He wants to love you. He wants to remind you that you are lovable, that you are created by God, and he loves you so intimately. The number's at the bottom of our screen, 1-866-273-4444. And maybe you're somebody watching and you've been the person who betrayed your spouse. Maybe you made that mistake. Let me remind you that you are not your mistake, that there is hope, there is redemption, as long as you're willing to accept it, as long as you're willing to admit that you did wrong. God is always there, always redeeming, always wanting to forgive, as long as you are willing to accept that forgiveness. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I wanted to know who I was, why I was alive, and most importantly, what the future held for me.
It's a journey that I think all of us walk through on some level or another.
I think there's something in us that cries out and says, actually, no, there has to be something more.
What's right and what's wrong?
It was a 180-degree shift for me.
There was unspeakable peace in my heart.
I had a whole new set of values that began to impact my life and make me think about the direction I ought to go.
I couldn't think of anything worth seeking for in life more than that.
You know, one of the reasons 100 Huntley Street started over 40 years ago is to help people get free sexual addictions, drug, alcohol addictions, all these kinds of things. That's why this program exists every single day. And David Maines was the man that really felt that, you know, I want to see Christians in Canada and really around the world be healthy and come into a relationship with Jesus.
And you know, David was such a visionary, which I loved about him. He had all of these ideas. And I know the team in the back could say, yeah, some of those ideas were so big. But you know, just the other day, well, a couple weeks ago, when I was picking up my son from camp, from Circle Square Ranch, David Maines, that was his vision. He started those ranches. And I just think of how we can continue to carry that torch of being able to be visionaries and looking at ways that we can just be able to affect change, how we can remind people about Jesus and who God is.
And he was always cheering us on. And again, you talk about, you know, the various ideas and even in the studio, you know, just saying, no, we got to do this. I feel the Spirit is saying to do this. And our production team's going, oh, okay, we'll try to facilitate that. But David was a guy that just so cared about people. That was the bottom line. And, you know, we'll always be in debt to him. We love him, and we're just going to be with him someday. And I like what Reynolds, his son, says, you know, Dad's not gone. He's just gone ahead.
And I think that's a great reminder to you today. If you do not know Jesus, we would not be able to end the show without saying, if you don't know Jesus, call our prayer lines. They would love to introduce him to you today. Well, we want to leave today with a great tribute to the man, David Maines.
This is God's land, and let us all serve him with a heart filled with love and respect one for another. That's what makes our country a great country, a free country.
Of honor, an enthusiastic crowd, about 500 people go in at a time.
He shall have dominion also from sea to sea. I believe my calling is to proclaim that to Canada.
I think he deeply loves the gospel and the message of Christ. He's an evangelist at heart. He wants to see people come to faith.
David has really been able to embrace and bring a lot of people together for the cause of Christ in Canada.
And we're calling on Canadians to repent. And we're asking that God will forgive us and that God will truly heal our land.
There is a spirit in this place, a spirit of repentance that grips my heart.
Hey, that's really sad.
David Maines is a prince of God's people. His faithfulness and the presence of the daily 100 Huntley Street program have been a lighthouse for our nation.
You pray with David Maines. By the time the prayer is over, you really know the man of God.
I've watched you, and I've watched your consistency and your friendship to me, and your caring not just for the ministry, but for me as a person.
You have to love God by loving people.
Lots of fun, everybody.
What's this? It doesn't matter.
It does.
Doesn't do bad.
Not so fast, Mr. Maines.
Oh, you got me. Okay. Boy.
This is my song.
All right.
This is God's call. He is enabling the call to be fulfilled.
This is my story.
Hello, Crossroads is originating today in the studio. How are things going?
Third choice.
Facebook Crossroads and our Circle Square Children's telecast. About 1 million people have come through our pavilion. Swinging Normandy. Let's pray right now then. Lord, I thank you for this wonderful answer prayer.